On behalf of my colleagues from across the institution, I want to welcome you to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival Beyond the Mall. For the next 10 days, we will use our digital platforms to share stories of culture, creativity, and the environment from partners in the United Arab Emirates, the Brazilian states of Bahia, Maranhão, and Pernambuco, the U.S. Department of Energy, and the Solar Decathlon, and our very own Smithsonian Conservation Commons. Although this year we will not be on the National Mall in Washington as planned, the efforts of the festival's remarkable staff, interns, and volunteers continue. During this time of profound challenge and change, the communities with which they work have much to teach us about building an equitable and sustainable future. I encourage you to join us often and to participate actively by including your questions and comments in our program's chat section. As the Smithsonian's 14th secretary and as a historian and educator by training, I find the Folklife Festival's origin story to be particularly relevant to this moment. In 1967, then Secretary Esteline Ripley issued the mandate to take the instruments out of their cases and make them sing. Against the backdrop of the civil rights movement and the burgeoning anti-war protests, he and the festival's creators understood that the Smithsonian had to reflect and challenge America's image of itself. By working with communities from throughout the United States and later the world to bring their stories and cultural heritage to Washington, D.C., the festival made space for difficult conversations and joyful encounters through creative expression. Over the years, the thousands of artisans and cooks, dancers and musicians have contributed to building a festival whose work is as relevant and needed now as it ever was. At this moment, in our homes and on our streets, people of all walks of life are coming together, rolling up their sleeves, to operate what Martin Luther King called the beloved community. Manifesting this just society depends on having spaces for hard discussions about racism, intersectionality, decriminalization, and environmental sustainability. It also requires places that celebrate creativity, that spark joy and foster possibility. Yes, culture matters. I am extremely proud of my colleagues at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, which produces the Folklife Festival, for moving, quote, beyond the mall to ensure that the Smithsonian is able to live its values by amplifying voices in the global chorus of those working towards an equitable future. Thank you again for joining us.
Welcome to Earth Optimism, Conservation and Communities from the Kachemak Bay to the Chesapeake Bay, a part of Beyond the Mall from the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. Thank you all for joining us. I cannot believe that this is the day we would be out baking in the sun on the Smithsonian, on the National Mall. And instead, we're all sitting in our homes from Alaska to the Mid-Atlantic, looking into little boxes. We're very excited to have a great group with us today. Real-time captioning and ASL interpretation are being provided for today's program. To access these services, please follow the links in the comments below. We recommend that they be opened in a separate browser window or on a separate device alongside the event broadcast in order to view the program simultaneously. My name is Ruth Stolk, and I am Executive Director of the Smithsonian Conservation Commons. And the Conservation Commons is actually bringing the whole Smithsonian together to be more impactful in conservation. We have a long history and tradition of working in conservation across our cultural assets as well as our vast scientific enterprise. I'll tell you more a little bit later. Today, we invite you to participate in a conversation that explores how Smithsonian scientists and local communities work together to ensure environmental and ecological protections for the waters and lands around them. I'm thrilled that Sabrina Lynn Motley director of the Folklife Festival, had this idea several years ago that we all work together on this and really investigate more about community knowledge and how that can impact conservation and the environment. So we're thrilled to have this opportunity. Thank you, Sabrina. You're such a good friend and mentor. We'll be taking your comments in the live chat below, so please participate. We want this to be a lively discussion. This event is supported by the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and highlights the Smithsonian's Earth Optimism initiative, and which highlights success stories in conservation and sustainability. If you don't know the festival, I encourage you to check out the festival.si.edu to learn about our programs, education resources, and more. Now, I'd like to welcome our guests. And I just want to say, before I introduce these four extraordinary people, that all of us are so honored to be able to open the festival. As some of you know, Earth Optimism is a global movement that we were able to launch in 2017, along with partners in the UK and elsewhere. And it's just simply focused on what's working. People can see something working, then they want to copy it. And it's just the oldest story in the culture book, that we tell stories and we copy one another. So we're very excited today to talk about what is working, find out things that are working in two major estuaries that feed and nurture humans in them. I wanted to mention that the Conservation Commons has an audacious working group called Working Land and Seascapes, which is really pushing the envelope on how people, how communities and scientists can work together more effectively. It's a real frontier that we're in. Obviously, some scientists have been doing the right thing forever, have joined in communities, become part of communities, and really learned from their colleagues on the ground, and others have remained isolated. But we know that we're all coming together now to really be more effective, and we're very excited about this initiative. And most of these speakers are involved in Working Land and Seascapes. So I want to introduce Dennis Whigham. Dennis is an exemplar of long-term community engagement in both the Chesapeake and Kachemak, and he's worked all over the place. Plus, he speaks Dutch, so I really think that's cool. Coowe Walker. She is a muse and she is multi-talented. She's a researcher in her own right, but she also works very closely with communities, and it has created some very great models for productively interfacing in a nearly pristine system. And she's going to show us where she is today, which she's having breakfast this morning with us in Alaska. Fred Tutman is an inspirational leader in the cause of protecting rivers in a system that's highly developed, very different from Kachemak, which is so clean and lovely still, and the Chesapeake is so highly developed. And Fred is a fighter, and we love having him with us. He's also one of the newest citizen leaders of the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, which is out near Annapolis. Proud to have you here today. And Matt Ogburn, who I always like to say he's young, but you know, he's growing up too. He's just setting out to establish a fisheries research program in the Chesapeake area. And he is also one of our leaders in the Conservation Commons in our movement of life and Working Land and Seascapes action areas. And he wants to get it right with communities from the get-go. So this combination of people is really groovy. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. So first of all, I'm just going to give a little overview of how I want to do this. First, I want us to warm up by having each of you talk about yourselves a little bit, kind of like a lightning round. And then we'll come back around and dig in a little deeper on this topic of how communities and science can work together. And hopefully we'll uncover all kinds of great stuff that will be food for thought for many years to come. I'm going to start out with Coowe, since she's in the most inspirational spot right now. And before she talks, I want to show just a really short swatch from a video that I want to shout out to my colleagues, Molly Dodge, the Working Land and Seascapes group that initiated this film with the idea of encouraging scientists to tell stories better from the field. And this is a great example. And the whole film can be, you can look it up on just Google SI Heartbeat YouTube. But this is just an excerpt. The film's been accepted in some prominent film festivals, so we're very excited to have Coowe and the film.
Salmon is the heart of the ecosystem here, and it's the heart of people, too. We all have to understand that what we do in the landscape around these streams is having an effect on those streams, an effect on those baby salmon. I want salmon to be there for, generations to come, but we have to make the right decisions as a group, or we won't have salmon.
So, Coowe, I think we all might be able to guess why you want to work where you do, but tell us a little bit more about what drives you and what's important about the work to you that you're doing there in Alaska.
Sure. Well, I just want to thank you, Ruth, and everyone. It's been really fun being part of the prelude to this, and I'm excited to join today. So we have in our area where I am right now, I'm going to show you in a moment a little preview of it. We live in a landscape that is still connected, and it's still, we have what's one remarkable thing that you notice when you're in Alaska is that you have full ecosystems. So you have top predators from brown bears on the landscape to orcas in the ocean, and you have salmon coursing through the watersheds like a pulse, and people, of course, who are using these resources. It's a remarkable opportunity to keep a landscape intact and connected. And I also want to point out that one of the reasons we have this opportunity is because this is the land of the Dena'ina and Suspiaq people who have stewarded the land for thousands of years. And more recently, a lot of other folks have come here, and we're also interested in promoting stewardship. But the reason we have what we have now is because people before us took care of it. So I'm going to step aside here and show you. This is outside my home, and what you're looking at is the field below my house, and that's the head of Kachemak Bay. We have a huge tidal range, so the tide is going out right now. And you see the mountains in the distance and some glaciers. And then you see some clouds over the mountains. And our bay, the word Kachemak means smoky. And so the Kachemak Bay is Smoky Bay for all the cloud cover that we get. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about how we engage with our communities when we dig into the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Coowe. Now I want to turn to Fred Tutman. And we have a really short video about you, and then we can talk.
Things I like to do in the mornings is I check these pots that we put out, mostly because I want to see what's running through this section of river. It's kind of like a Christmas present. I never know what's going to be in here. Today, looks like white perch.
Fred Tutman has a unique connection to the river. He is the official and only riverkeeper for the Patuxent, which spans 115 miles through the state.
I'm really a community organizer where community is defined by a watershed.
On any given day, you'll find Tubman monitoring the health of the river and its wildlife. He is a vigilant watchdog, working with organizations like the Department of Natural Resources to maintain the health of the waterway.
Oh, that's great. Well, I want more of that. Fred, could you tell us a little bit more? What excites you about working on the Patuxent, and how did you get into it, and why?
So I worked as a journalist for 25 years, pretty much as a nomad, but my origins were on a family farm located in a small town along the Patuxent River in Maryland, actually a town formed by act of British Parliament before the Revolutionary War. Many generations of my family had a sense of tenure on the land where my family comes from along the Patuxent River. But as a nomad, I lost that legacy, I lost that heritage. And late in life, maybe it was a midlife crisis, I really was, I'll be honest, I was sick and tired of covering news stories that were faceless or generic. I couldn't connect to the people or the issues because we were objective as journalists, and I wanted more. I wanted to be more invested in community, because I think community is extremely important, as was said in the video. I'm a community organizer. A lot of my work, granted, while it's with lawyers and it's with science and it's on the river, but it's also with people. I'm restoring and helping to rebuild communal infrastructure, helping people to talk to each other so that they can engage on problems related to the environment of common concern, problems of sustainability, local problems, not just issues in a generic sense, but local problems. That was much more satisfying work than covering a news story or working on a film, where once we were done with it, we were done with it. We couldn't hang on to it. It was no longer ours. It was out there in the world. Here I get to make eye contact with people whose lives we can change, we can improve. And that's exciting work. That's what really excites me about this, is it's something I can touch, as opposed to work I did before, where it was kind of in the ether, in the airwaves.
Oh, that's a fantastic point. I'm sure a lot of people in our audience can identify with that. Dennis, I'm going to turn to you now. As a Smithsonian Environmental Research Center scientist, you started doing riparian research in the Chesapeake in the 1970s, and then you branched out to Alaska. Please tell us why and how this happened. What's important to you about it personally?
Thanks, Ruth, and to your staff for the opportunity to be part of this activity. As you indicated, I've been working in the Chesapeake since the 1970s, and in a couple of decades ago, we had a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, the focus of which was to try to determine what the causes of human activities were on the land and how those activities resulted in changes in the estuary. And much to our surprise, basically everything that we measured, from water quality to PCBs in fish and wetland plants, were impacted by what happened on the landscape. And with that information and already kind of knowing about Coowe up there in Alaska, I headed there, and we started a collaboration that's gone on for about 20 years. And what to me is so wonderful about that collaboration is that, as she's indicated, she lives in a world that we haven't messed up yet. And so it gave us as scientists the opportunity to study how the land is linked to the water and provide the scientific knowledge that can be conveyed to people so that they don't make bad decisions. And that's what we're doing right now. And I find that incredibly exciting.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And now, Matt, last but not least, you're establishing a new focal area at Smithsonian for Chesapeake Area Fisheries Research. Tell us a little bit about this and why you're excited about doing this work. Also, what attracted you to the Chesapeake?
Thanks, Ruth, and I want to thank you as well for the opportunity to participate in this group today. I think you asked what attracts me to the Chesapeake. I grew up in Virginia, in the mountains of Virginia. I think my first experience in the Chesapeake was actually just down the river from where Fred is, on the Patuxent River, a 7th grade field trip for a week. Got out on the bay. But I went on to graduate school and other things and studied blue crabs. And if you know the Chesapeake, you know that blue crabs are a huge part of the culture in this area, and one of my favorite foods. And I think that's true for a lot of other folks. So that was a big draw coming back. But for my research, I'm a marine ecologist, really interested in sort of the intersection between fish and crabs and oysters and other things that we fish for in the environment, and then how they interact with human activities. And I see the Chesapeake, even though it's degraded, it's also a really interesting place to work, to study what the potential is to restore it, and what happens when we help nature out a little bit with restoration, and what comes from that.
That's great. Fantastic. So now I hope everybody in the audience has had a chance to get to know these people a little bit. Now I'd like to move into more of a discussion about the relationship of communities, their knowledge, and the scientific knowledge that's being generated, and the people who do science. I wanted to start with you, Fred. Stay here in this region for a minute. Tell us about your community's relationship with science and scientists, and has it changed over time?
I think it's evolved a little bit. I should say that some of the communities we interact with, science is not uppermost in their minds. It's having a spiritual or personal connection to the river. So for us, science is a tool in a toolbox of many things that we use in order to help communities achieve their aims and their gains. So it doesn't start with science. Science is always a means towards that broader end. But I do know that for some people, science is also the basis. It's the end as well. And in fact, I know people connected to our organization who have been collecting records, citizen testing, literally for decades. And frankly, some of what we do is to provide a forum for them to share that information. That's important to the general community. You know, it's a 110-mile river, not big shakes, but an important river in Maryland because of its geopolitical status, right? It's the only, or longest rather, deepest river that stays entirely in the state. So in a sense, you could have a community inside of one state, a broad community dedicated to its protection, upholding it, but more importantly, creating pockets of activism and independence where people can stand up and fight for these rivers. That's the work that we can replicate. Long after Patuxent Riverkeeper's gone, long after Fred Tutman's gone, I'd like to think we're planting seeds that will help keep this river's community struggling. You know, not because we think struggle is, you know, the end game, but because that's what it takes, I think, to get clean water.
Fred, I'm going to poke you a little here about something you said as we were preparing for all this. You mentioned that, you know, some people's relationship with science is a little weird. You know, they think they maybe are suspicious, or they think science might even suck the spirituality out of a situation. Could you just elaborate a little on that?
Sure. So some of our indigenous folks that we interact with do have I won't say skepticism, because I don't want to make it sound like they're science deniers. They think that science as a portal to understanding and appreciating these resources is only one lens. They actually really do start with that personal connection. And we obviously encourage that. Actually, I think you can't pay enough people to fight, to struggle, to save this watershed. But if you can inspire people to do it, and the way people get inspired often enough is through that personal connection, whatever that connection is. It might be science, but it might be some other thing. When I say spirituality, I don't mean religion. I mean that sense of communion or connection that people have that's very integral. Frankly, it's what drew me to the movement. When I heard Bobby Kennedy Jr., who was the president of our organization, still is the president of our organization, of our broader licensed organization, I went to a speech where he said that God speaks to you through nature, whoever God happens to be to you, in any language, in any vector. Right. So I use that in my speeches, right? If you want to find inspiration about water, you don't go to the mall, right? You go to the river and you sit next to her. You know, we use the female pronoun because we believe the river is the mother of all things, or many things anyway. So that's the perspective that we bring to it. We honor any and all connections that people bring to the river, including science, including spirituality, including drumming, including meditating, whatever it takes.
And is it true that you're the only African-American riverkeeper in the United States?
It's presently true. There have been others before me in various watersheds, but at the moment, I happen to be the only African-American in the movement. There are lots of Africans, Asians, people from many, many different, we're an international movement, waterkeepers. So yeah, I'd say we're a multicultural movement in that respect.
So how does racial justice play into all this?
Well, justice is one of those vectors. Justice is also a theme that people connect to the environment through as well. An important one, I think, especially true in communities that have been disenfranchised, where some of the worst problems are likely to be found in these watersheds, people suffering from class-based, race-based, and other sorts of disparities. There's a picture of me, much thinner me, probably close to 30 years ago. Long before I was the Patuxent Riverkeeper, I was a local activist in my community, until I realized the potential was for a community that was bigger than my zip code, bigger than the street or road that I lived on. So we started fighting buoy sludge back in 1980 something. And there are lots and lots of struggles and battles. And what I think is extraordinary is you meet people in this work who reveal themselves, who they really are to you. I like to think that a riverkeeper is kind of like a bartender or a priest in that respect. It's a symbol, a practical one, but it's also one where part of the joy is people sharing what they know, sharing a part of who they are when they're next to that river. That's extraordinary. It's honor. It's an honor. To be honest, it brings tears to my eyes sometimes what people share, these precious nuggets that they want to get out of themselves. And I think that's a part of the work as well. It recharges you. It's got the wind at your back half the time because you're empowered by these stories that people are entrusting you with, essentially.
Wow. That's an amazing set of points. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. Coowe, I'm going to skip back over to you in Paradise. Tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit more. I know that you are a researcher yourself, but you also are very embedded in your community and you're about the community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that relationship between the community and the scientists?
Sure. And so many things that you said, Fred, really resonated with me, and I'm going to touch back on them because they're true here as well. So yes, I'm a watershed ecologist. I'm also the manager of the Kachemak Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is a kind of a unique partnership between the federal government, NOAA, National Atmospheric Oceanic Administration, and the University of Alaska Anchorage, our state partner, and then our communities. Our community was really who made the reserve happen. We have a community council who guides us, and the relationship with science it's really interesting to see how it's evolved. So when I started 20 years ago, when the reserve was being designated, I got involved with it, and I met Dennis soon after. And one of the things that Dennis pointed out to me when we were talking about the region is that salmon are vital to our community in so many ways. I mean, it's our ticket into people's interests. And like Fred was talking about how people, you have a personal story. Everybody has a personal story about salmon. This is an image of me holding what we call a photarium. It's a plexiglass tank, basically. And you see in it some juvenile coho salmon or silver salmon. These are going to grow up to be, 10-pound fish eventually. But they live in our watersheds, in our tiny headwater streams. And Dennis first pointed this out to me. Well, we didn't know there were salmon there yet, but he said, from his work in the Chesapeake, these tiny headwaters are going to be really important in your whole watershed, because we know what happens on the landscape, at least in the Chesapeake, is important to the whole river. And so we started writing grants and getting funding, and we start our first project. We found that there were thousands of juvenile salmon living in these tiny headwaters, and nobody had any idea. People here had no idea, because we all fish for salmon in the ocean. We don't fish for salmon. We don't notice salmon in the tiny streams next to our houses. So we've done years of research. Fast forward, we've learned that the landscape supports this productivity in the streams through alder, which fixes nitrogen, and these vast peatlands we have, which provide carbon and temperature moderation and groundwater flows. We've had teams of researchers come in and help us. The reserve is a platform, and we've published a lot of papers, and we've given a lot of presentations, and we have this really robust body of science. However, and this is a really important point to me now, because we're at a real pivotal time here for us, we realized that we weren't really gaining a lot of traction doing all this great science. I mean, it was really exciting to us. It was getting noticed in the scientific community, and our community council, who would come to our meetings, were excited about it, but it wasn't having a real effect until I would say really Working Lands and Seascapes came along. And what we were able to do there is get funding to engage with people outside. And this gets back to Fred's point about being near the river, being on the water, being with people in that place that inspires us all. And we took people, and we are doing this now still, we take people in the field, we show them what we're learning. This is a picture of a group, the North Pacific Fishermen's Association. They came out last fall with their families. A lot of our fishing, commercial fishing here is family oriented. And you can see there's a man standing facing us holding one of these photariums filled with baby salmon, and he's got a grin. I love it. This is Malcolm Milne. He's the president of the North Pacific Fishermen's Association. He is so thrilled to find baby salmon in the tiny headwater stream, which is behind us. And there's grass all around us. You can't even see the stream, but there's hundreds of salmon there. So this effort to bring people in the field with us and to learn from them what's important to them, and to see them get inspired, to share the science, and then also to see that there's more than just the science. Fred was alluding to, we learned that there's a lot of people that are inspired and share through art and through other, just, their culture, their connection. Everybody has a connection. So that's a new wave that we're working on now, kind of art, science integrated field trips where we bring artists and scientists into the field and talk about, how different viewpoints interpret the landscape. And it's just been really rich and really rewarding. And my hope is that we will have enough support in all these different parts of the community, all these different nodes, that we will be able to make the right decisions and protect these waters that we depend on so much. What's showing now is an image of a group of young students, interns, high school interns from the remote village of Tyonek, which is fly-in only. And we were able to connect these students and bring them to where we were, to the research we were doing. And they learned how to collect juvenile salmon and learned about landscape support. And then they were able to take this information back to their village. And we also went and visited them in their village and really helped build our connection with that village and help build the understanding of how science understands the landscape and how indigenous peoples understand the landscape and how we can connect together. So it's been really, really a rewarding relationship that we're building. So I could go on a long time, but I know we want to hear from other people, so I'll stop there.
Well, I think we all want to come work for you, for one thing. Dennis, we lost him for a second, given the vicissitudes of working out of one's home. But I see him now. Dennis, can you talk to us a little bit? And we thought we'd go straight from Coowe to you, since you all have worked together so much on these projects. I just wanted to know, a little bit more about the types of relationships that you've developed to make that work successful in those settings, actually both in the Chesapeake and Kachemak.
Okay, well, thanks. I had to jump to another computer. My little one died.
You sound great.
Hoping everybody can hear me. Well, I've been beating around for about 50 years. I have an interest in how plants make a living. And so that interest has worked from the molecular level up to whole landscapes. And about half of my career has been spent in doing wetland ecology. And that's really what got me connected with Coowe. And the exciting part of this is to try to understand how elements of the land are connected to wetland elements that are directly connected to streams. And in the work that we've been doing in Alaska, which has been a collaboration not only with the Smithsonian, but colleagues at Baylor University and the University of South Florida and University of Washington, I've been particularly interested in how the wetlands fit into that. And what we found is that the wetlands that are adjacent to the streams really benefit from the nitrogen that's coming off of the land. And you're seeing in this photograph, we're measuring the biomass of one of the dominant species that occur in the riparian zones. And this is a very tall grass. And when the end of the season comes, it falls over and hangs over the creek bank. And then that material decomposes and works its way into the stream food webs. And it turns out the productivity of the wetlands is largely dependent on what's coming to it from the land, and particularly the nitrogen that's coming from alder, which is a shrub or small tree that occurs commonly in that part of the world. And it turns out that all of that nitrogen makes its way into the creek. And I was getting back online, so I don't know if Coowe mentioned that about 75% of the nitrogen in the bodies of the fish actually comes from the land. That's pretty exciting. And so clearly it's important that in order to keep sustainable salmon in that world, people have to make the right kind of decisions on what they do on their properties, what they do to keep the landscape connected. That's really the key to the whole thing. And so the outreach that Coowe and her colleagues have been doing in the last couple of years has really focused on reaching out to the community, conveying the science to organizations and individuals in a way that they can understand. Obviously, understanding what the fish are doing was key to this whole thing. And here's Ryan King from Baylor, who actually worked with me on the Chesapeake Bay project, working with some folks to electrofish. And that's one of the methods that we use to determine how many million fish were up in the watershed. Another important thing to mention is that these small streams are further upstream than the adult salmon can reach when they come back from the ocean. So what happens is the adults lay their eggs, the eggs hatch, and the small fish, rather than heading downstream, many of them head upstream, and they'll spend from 1 to 2 and perhaps even 3 years in these tiny little streams that are high on the watershed that people really aren't aware of what's going on there. And we think it's incredibly important, and communicating is a key to it. And that's why we're so excited to be working with Coowe and her colleagues.
That's fantastic. Dennis, you, if you could convey one secret to younger researchers about how to function as a scientist working in communities, what would it be?
I think the main thing is these days is being open, so that you're not hanging out in an ivory tower, but all the doors and windows are open, and you're finding ways to reach out to people to communicate the knowledge that you have.
Oh, that sounds great. Wonderful. And that brings us back to Matt down here in the Chesapeake. Matt, when we talked last week, you talked about how it's important to begin a project by consulting with the community. Could you tell us a little more about what that looks like to you? How far are you into that?
Yeah, thanks. It's certainly a topic that's really important to me, and part of why I helped develop the Working Land and Seascapes program at Smithsonian that we're talking about. It is a new program, so I think we're trying to lay the groundwork for that in the Chesapeake, which is a place that has, it's a huge area with a lot of different communities and a lot of groups working already. So a big part of that has been reaching out as we're thinking about starting a new project to some of those communities and finding out how science that we're doing here at Smithsonian might feed into that or add to the knowledge that's being gained already from the variety of different sources, whether it's the community or scientists or others. And one of the projects that I'm working on is actually to try to restore the type of connections that Dennis and Coowe have been talking about in streams in the Chesapeake. So one of the kinds of species we have here, which are called river herring or shad, do similar migrations to salmon, where they live in the ocean and swim up into freshwater streams to spawn each spring. But that spawning migration has been blocked in much of the Chesapeake and other places along the Atlantic coast by human-built structures like this dam called Blody Dam, which was near Baltimore on the Patuxent River. And you can go see this site now if you go visit Patapsco Valley State Park. But this dam was built in 1907 and blocked much of the Patapsco River to fish, keeping them from getting to places they used to spawn. So the top image here is a picture of this dam that was about 30 feet tall, and you can see a lot of water rushing over the top of it. And if you imagine that being 30 feet, you can see why these fish swimming up from the ocean had a hard time getting upstream from that point. But one of the most successful conservation actions in the Chesapeake that a lot of people aren't aware of is that there's been a huge amount of work through what's called the Fish Passage Work Group that's part of the Chesapeake Bay program to restore those connections to upstream habitats. This particular dam was removed in late 2018 and early 2019, so that by 1 year later, from the top picture, in the bottom you can see the river flowing through this area. This obviously wasn't raining as much. There's not nearly as much water flowing through, but you can go visit this site. There's a trail just out of sight above the river in the bottom image that you can hike on and go see this site. And the research that we're doing is studying how these fish called river herring are now passing through this dam site and onto places further upstream where they reproduce. So this was a great opportunity to bring some of the science that we're doing to Smithsonian to other research that community members and local universities and government agencies were doing on this site to study other responses to the removal of that dam, like what's happening to all the sediment that was stored up behind it, and what's happening with other types of species as well. But it was a great example of how in the Chesapeake we're in studying a system that's been heavily impacted by humans, but we're also learning a lot about what the potential is to restore that and try to rebuild those connections to make it a better place for both species, but also people in the future.
Oh, that's fantastic. We have a question from the audience right now through Facebook, which I think is about what I would have liked to ask all of you anyway. They're asking how, as ecologists and river keepers, how do they work with indigenous people from respective regions? And how are their practices and voices integrated into your work? Maybe we should start with Coowe, who has that beautiful bird singing in the background. Did you say it's a golden crowned sparrow?
It's a golden crowned sparrow, yes. There's actually a couple of them calling back and forth. That's a great question, and it's something that is super important. And as the reason that I mentioned at the very beginning that we are on the lands of the Dena'ina and Suspiaq people, because you know, our recent history with Western people being here is kind of taken over, and people, you know, the indigenous cultures here have not been as noticed, I guess, and recognized for their contribution to stewarding the land until pretty recently. And again, working with Working Lands and Seascapes, this has been a really great opportunity to connect, to just have that opportunity to for time, really, because it takes time. And that's one of the, when you ask how we do it, the biggest thing that I've learned so far, and we're still learning, is this idea of building relationship. And we need to build trust. And that's often a personal, trusted relationship. And we're able to do that when we connect with each other, you know, outside, or even now in today's world virtually, but making the time to build those relationships and not rushing things. It can take, you know, years, and that's where we're at now, but it's super important. And the continuity of the same people is super important as well. And so people know that you can, you know, they can trust that you will be there. The same person will be there. They can come back. And when they come to, you know, want to engage, you can say, you know, they know, like, oh, is Coowe here? Or is this Jacob here? One of our other staff members. So they know they have someone that they trust. And that's in the indigenous cultures here, it's really important to be very clear about your intentions and to be very open about what you're, you know, what you want and what you're doing and what you're bringing. And so that's really just an unfolding process. We learned so much from that process as well, because sometimes we haven't realized that we weren't being clear or we weren't being open about what we were bringing. And I think that's really important for researchers. In Alaska, there's been a lot, as I'm sure there are in other places, where, you know, people come in with the best of intentions. I'm going to study this. Can you tell me all about your native ways? Thank you so much. We'll publish it and let you know. That really doesn't cut it, you know. Like, we have to be part of the community and really open our hearts and our minds and build trust.
Yeah. Can you give an example of, you know, so you said people, you know, were often not noticed, the knowledge they had. Can you give an example of how something that, you know, a local person knew came back to really inform the process?
Yeah, I just had a really exciting exchange, or it's been developing with an artist, a man from the Ninilchik tribes named Arjun Kavasnikov. And he was sharing with me the oral history that he was rediscovering from his cultural background that talked about wayfinding from the Ninilchik Dome. And I haven't even had a chance to share this with Dennis yet, but Dennis has worked in these watershed, headwaters in this region. And he was telling me how through oral tradition, they've learned about wayfinding, and it follows the watersheds. And it is pretty much what we're talking about when we're talking about connectivity in our headwaters and juvenile salmon using those headwaters and then, you know, migrating downstream. So it's a different way of knowing the same thing, but they've known it for thousands of years.
Wow. Yeah, the traditional ecological knowledge is something that it seems like we need to do more work, not less, to really dig in there and find out. And it sounds like you're on the path. It's very, and you made the point that it really, you know, it's about relationships and taking time to spend time with people. I'm getting notes from people saying they're all dreaming of coming to Alaska to see you. So get ready when there's COVID travel restrictions lift. Fred, did you want to comment on the question about indigenous knowledge?
Well, I can. I'll try and keep it succinct because it's a deep question, and it's been a personal journey for me. I've noticed maybe 6, 7 years over into this river keeping journey, which, by the way, I originally thought would be a 5-year journey because I thought that was the longest I could afford to be a river keeper. I started training the next one, but now it's been 17 years.
That's
because
amazing.
the work is so rich. The work, there's 5 lifetimes, if not more, of work to be done on this river. So I began to see or hear that there were very different stories to be told to us by different interest groups along the river. In Black communities, we were hearing very different messages. In white communities, we were hearing that Black people didn't care about the environment, which didn't mirror my experience at all. And so I began to really change the airspace around the organization to be more responsive to those communities who were absent from our events, who didn't show up at the events. Because I did have this sense that these large, big greens had defined that airspace. And we're a small green, where I think humanitarian connections, compassionate connections to communities are very, very important, that we can make people feel welcome. So I wrote an op-ed, it got published around the country, and 2 board members quit. And I simply said, we're gonna take off the blinders. We're gonna hear all stories. And the same day, 3 people of color, our 2 board members quit, 3 people of color said, how do I get on your board? It had the effect of tectonically changing how we were interacting with these communities where people felt welcome from many walks. You know, the day I saw Muslims praying on our front lawn in the office, I thought, okay, they feel safe here. This is a place where they can do their thing in relation to the environment. So it meant really repositioning the organization to serve all comers, because that's the only kind of movement I could envision that had the proportional mass to work on these problems on the river. A movement made up of only white folks clearly didn't have the mass to do what we had promised people we were trying to do, which is to save this river, protect this river. And likewise, movements that didn't have that energy of lots of different people from lots of different walks, new ideas, new concepts, different players, a place where the airspace wasn't controlled by one set of expectations. And last but not least, I also found when I talked to white audiences, the assumption was that I was validating that I was in, quote, their movement. People would say that to me. He's in our movement, right? Right. In fact, one of the largest funders in the area has a expression, our bay. It's like, who's the our, right? Yeah. So when I went into Black communities, they thought wherever I was, anywhere in the country, that I was their river keeper, which put a particular burden on me to be sympathetic and to understand. I don't know that my white colleagues understood that. And we had a lot of pushback, like, oh, they're impertinent. One guy said to me in the riverkeeper movement, we let you in this movement and now you want to change everything. And I was just stunned, like, wow, they let us in. So I do think we have a lot of work to do in
yes, we do.
The paradigms. And that's really the key. And I think we're kind of have walked into this blindly. We're learning as we go. We're getting better as we go. But what makes it all fly, I think, is the good faith of these communities that have a compassionate connection both to each other and to the river. And that's really exciting work. Justice is one heck of a theme to organize around.
Yes.
It's magnetic.
Well, this is an incredible time to be alive. I think we're all, living through some very difficult times. And it's very exciting to hear that really we're only beginning to, even though some things like, Dennis did sort of, it came second nature to him to work closely with communities over decades. I think the rest of us, we're all really in a frontier where we really need to push that intersection a lot harder. And I just so appreciate what both of you on the community side have said about this. Dennis and Matt, do you have any final comment about the way forward? What do you want people to know about your vision for the?
Well, I guess I would expand a little bit and say what we've been doing with Coowe and her folks up in Alaska is just exemplary, because it shows that when you connect with the right people, they can walk you into the community and your voice can be heard. I've taken the same approach with a project I've started on orchid conservation, trying to save all the native orchids in the North America and eventually in the world. It's the same thing. I can't do it. Us scientists can't do it. We have to reach out to the world to make it happen. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in that example also. So reaching out is clearly very important. And in training young scientists, that's what needs to happen. They need to be told that you have to get outside of your office.
Thank you. Matt, you have a few seconds to give us the last word.
Sure. I'll take a shot. I think one of the things that's incredibly important to me is in working in conservation science is that what we're conserving is something that's a resource that belongs to all of us. And it's going to take all of us to rebuild and restore and sustain that. So, for planning my work, and for my career, it's really important to begin to build those bridges that Coowe and Fred and Dennis have talked about, and to build a program and a conservation movement that everyone can be a part of and contribute to.
Well, let's go and do it. I think that's a great send off, and hopefully we can have more conversations like this and really set the stage for a future of productive relationship building. I want to just wrap things up here and say thank you to these incredible speakers, Matt Ogburn, Fred, and applause in the background, please, Fred Tutman, Dennis Whigham, and Coowe Walker. And thank you to the audience for participating, all those who watched, listened, and commented. I want to close by offering thanks to Elisa Huff, Sarah Rothman, Jenny Maycock, Diane Nutting, Alex Taggart, and Sabrina Lynn Motley for their production, promotion, and administrative efforts. Also to Conservation Commons Cat Cutts for her work on promoting this. Thanks also to Christine Buckley and Bathsheba Bryant Tarpe, Laurel Rand Lewis, Arlene Reiniger, and Betty Bellanis, who worked behind the scenes to organize this session and kept us all sane, even as things blinked on and off. Follow the Smithsonian Folklife page here on Facebook to get notifications about future events, and find us also on Instagram at Smithsonian Folklife and YouTube. Visit our website and come back here for the next Folklife program. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.